Think about your days so far. Did you stream some music, check your email, maybe save a file to Google Drive or Dropbox? Of course you did. And all of those things, they're powered by this thing we call the cloud. But what is it? I mean, it sounds so abstract, right? Like it's just floating around up there. Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain and demystify it once and for all. So here's our game plan. We're going to start by traveling back in time a bit to look at the ideas that came before the cloud. Then we'll nail down exactly what cloud computing is. After that, we'll check out the different services on the cloud menu, figure out where this thing physically lives, and wrap up by exploring why it matters so much to all of us.
You know, to really get a grip on the cloud, we have to look back. It wasn't some light bulb moment. It didn't just pop into existence one day. No, it's actually the result of a long evolution, built on the shoulders of some really brilliant ideas in computing that paved the way.
The first huge shift in thinking was this move from what's called centralized computing, where everything ran on one single giant machine, to distributed computing. This was a total game changer. It was the idea that you could link a bunch of separate computers together and get them to work on a problem as a team. And that word right there, autonomous, that's the key. We're not talking about one big computer with lots of parts. We're talking about a whole network of independent machines, each doing its own thing, but all communicating and sharing the workload. This simple concept, it's the bedrock for everything that came next. So you take that idea and you build on it. The next step was something called grid computing. The goal here was even more ambitious, to create a massive virtual supercomputer by grabbing all the unused power from countless machines scattered all over a network. Think of all the time your computer is on but just sitting there. That's processing power just waiting to be used. And this quote from IBM just nails it with the perfect analogy, the electrical power grid. I mean, think about it. When you plug your phone into the wall, you don't know or care where that electricity is coming from. You just want the power. That was the dream for grid computing, to let you plug into a network and get all the computing power you needed, totally seamless. Okay, great idea, but how do you turn this into a business? That's where utility computing steps in. It provided the business model. Instead of buying your own power plant, you just pay the utility company for the electricity you actually use. This pay-as-you-go concept was the final crucial piece of the puzzle. So now, let's put it all together. You take the distributed network idea, you add the massive power pooling from grid computing, and you wrap it all up in that pay-as-you-go business model from utility computing. And what do you get? You get cloud computing. It's the culmination of all these earlier ideas. Now, this is the official textbook definition from the U.S. National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST. And yeah, it's a bit of a mouthful, I know. But the key phrase to focus on is shared pool of configurable computing resources. Let's break down what that really means in practice, because it all boils down to 5 essential characteristics. All right, let's walk through these. First, on-demand self-service. This just means you can get computing power whenever you want, automatically, without having to call somebody up. Next, broad network access means you can get to your stuff from your phone, your tablet, your laptop, whatever. Resource pooling is the magic behind the scenes. It's how providers serve tons of customers using the same physical hardware. Then there's rapid elasticity, which is absolutely crucial. It means you can scale way up for a big sales event and then scale right back down the next day. And finally, measured service, that's the utility model. You only pay for what you actually use. Now, you might hear people talk about the cloud like it's just one thing, but it's not. It's really more like a menu at a restaurant with different levels of service you can choose from. The 3 big ones you'll hear about are infrastructure, platform, and software as a service. And before we get tangled up in the acronyms, IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS, let's use a simple analogy to make sense of it all. Think about transportation. At the most basic level, you have the roads. That's your infrastructure. On top of those roads, you have the vehicles, the cars and trucks. That's your platform. And finally, you have the actual people and goods being moved around. That's your software. The only question is, how much of that journey do you want to manage yourself? And this table here, it makes it super clear. It all comes down to what you manage versus what the provider manages for you. With infrastructure as a service, or IaaS, the provider gives you the raw materials, the servers, the storage, but you're in charge of the operating system and everything on top. Move up to platform as a service, PaaS, and they handle the OS for you too. You just bring your code and your data. And then you get to software as a service, SaaS, think Gmail or Netflix. The provider manages literally everything. You just log in and use it. Okay, so this is a question I get a lot. Where does the cloud actually live? Is it just floating up in the sky? Well, no. It lives in these absolutely massive, football field-sized buildings called data centers, packed with servers. And there are a few different ways we can tap into them. So you've got four main models. First, the public cloud. This is the one you probably use every day. Services from Amazon, Microsoft, or Google that anyone can use. Then you've got the private cloud, which is the same tech, but it's built and operated just for one single company. A hybrid cloud, just like it sounds, mixes the two. A company might keep its secret stuff on a private cloud, but use the public cloud when they get a huge spike in traffic. And finally, there's a community cloud, where a few organizations with similar goals, say a group of research universities, might all share the cost of a single setup. All right, so we've covered the what, the how, and the where. But now we get to the most important question. So what? Why did this whole idea completely take over the tech world? Why does it matter so much to you and me? Well, there are some massive advantages, for sure. For businesses, the costs are way lower, and they can scale up or down instantly. For us, our data is actually safer in a way. If your laptop breaks, your photos aren't gone forever, and we can get to our stuff from anywhere. But of course, there are downsides. You have to have a decent internet connection. Security is a huge, huge deal, and sometimes those web apps just aren't quite as feature-packed as the software on your desktop. But if you really want to know why businesses jumped on board so fast, it really comes down to one thing: money. And this number says it all. One analysis found it costs a company, on average, more than 1.5 times as much to run their own server compared to just renting an equivalent one from the cloud. When you see a number like that, you start to understand why this shift has been so absolute. So when you put it all together, the cloud has evolved from just some tech concept into a fundamental utility for the 21st century, every bit as essential as electricity. It's the connective tissue for our data, our businesses, our entire lives. And that leaves us with a really big question to think about. As it becomes the central nervous system of our global society, who should get to control it?